my name is Tom Butwin here for Premier Guitar, and today we're talking about DADGAD, one of the most inspiring and coolest tunings you can put your guitar into. The first thing we're going to do is talk about how to get your guitar into that tuning, and then we're going to go through a few basic chord shapes that I hope will inspire you to write something or just play guitar in a way you haven't in a long time. And the third thing we're going to talk about is a really cool hack I want you to stick around to the end of the video for, where I'm going to show you how to get into a DADGAD sort of tuning without having to retune anything on your guitar. So first, I'm assuming you're probably in standard tuning just like me. Before you grab your electronic tuner though, I want you to try to do this by ear, and it's not as difficult as you might think. DADGAD, as the name would suggest, means that you take each one of these strings and make them the notes that are in the word DADGAD, D, A, D, G, A, and D. What you might notice though is that a lot of those aren't going to change from standard tuning. Your A string, your D string, and your G string are all going to stay the same, which is a huge benefit when we get to the chord shapes. It's also a benefit if you want to try to tune by ear. So first of all, we need to make this low E string a D string. What I would suggest you do is go find your open D string and match that low E right to it. Now, you might be saying, hey, that sounds a lot like drop D tuning. I do that all the time. You're exactly right, and that is another reason why DADGAD is probably more familiar to you than you would think. The lower half of it just is drop D tuning. A is good to go, D is good to go, G is good to go. Now we get to our B string. So in DADGAD, that needs to be an A. You have an open A right here. Match that right up. Do the same thing with your high E string, which needs to be a D. Now, of course, if you're going to play live or record something, absolutely use a tuner to check your work and make sure that you're right on the money so that everything sounds as good as possible as we progress into the next portion of using DADGAD, which is actually playing stuff with it. So I'm going to show you 4 basic chord shapes that you can use to get your DADGAD journey started. The interesting thing about DADGAD as a tuning, when you just strum all the strings open, is that it's neither major nor minor. So that gives you a lot of control over how you can shape chords and what they sound like. Now, what makes a major chord or a minor chord a major or minor chord? It's the third. Now, we're not going to get too music theory heavy here, but you do need to know a little bit about how to make chords what they are. So if I would like to make a D chord, what I'm missing here is the third. So the third of a D chord is an F sharp. I need to find an F sharp to add in here if I want to make this a D major chord. This is where having your 3 strings that you did not touch from standard tuning really comes into play and is very helpful. I know that there's an F sharp, which is the third we're looking for, right here on the D string. So if I just at a bare minimum add that, we're getting closer to that D major chord that we are familiar with. Now, we can do the same thing with a G chord. Remember though, keep it simple. The lower half of this tuning is just like drop D. So if you're familiar with drop D tuning, you know that now on your low D string, if you play something at the 5th fret, you're actually playing a G. So if we want to play a G major chord, that's probably a good thing to put a nice low G in the root. So let's try this. Very cool chord, but not exactly the G major tonality we're looking for. We want to add that third. So what is the third in a G chord? It's the note B. And again, if I go to the 4th fret on the G string, I know that's a B. So now I'm playing my root of a G, I'm adding a B, but if I strum all of the notes, I get this really cool open G sound. So now you can move back and forth between your open G and then back to this D. Now, what I would suggest for clarity purposes is I would actually add an A on the G string. So now your D chord sounds something like this. You can move that back to your G. Now these may be new shapes to you, and that's okay. But the cool thing about them is that there's only 1 or 2 notes you have to fret in each of them. And I can actually show you a third chord shape that works really well, and you don't have to learn anything new. If you take this G and slide it up 2 frets to an A, but again, play all your strings, you get a really, really cool sound. So let's do that. We're already into new territory. I already hear song ideas, riff ideas. It's very exciting. That's what you want out of DADGAD. There's a 4th chord shape I'd like to show you, and that is centered around an E minor chord. Again, this tuning is similar to drop D. And you know, if you're playing in drop D and you have a song that has an E minor in it, you cannot just play your typical E minor shape. You have to bring that low E back in, and most of us do that by wrapping your thumb around. You can certainly do it with other fingerings, but if I wrap my thumb around, it's not a straight ahead E minor chord, but it is really cool, and it fits with the other 3 shapes that I've shown you as well. So now we have this, 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 throw this E minor chord. So you've got 4 basic chord shapes that I showed you that work great with DADGAD tuning. If you want to expand your possibilities immediately without learning any more shapes or figuring anything else out with this tuning, grab your capo and put it anywhere. I'm going to put it at the 7th fret. Use the same shapes I showed you, and all of a sudden you've got even more options, yes, in a different key, but still really, really cool. Possibilities are, again, endless. So as promised, I have a hack for you, and it requires a special piece of equipment, but it allows you to get to a tuning that is sort of like DADGAD, just a whole step higher without having to touch the tuning pegs on your guitar. And that special piece of equipment is a partial capo. Now this is a capo that only covers certain strings, and in this case, it's only covering 3 strings, and that's the A string, the D string, and the G string. So if I do that and I put it at the 2nd fret, what I've done essentially is turned my guitar into a DADGAD tuning, but a whole step higher than what we were working with before. And again, I didn't have to retune anything. All I did was put this capo on, and all of a sudden, those shapes I showed you still work really well. You get an interesting tonal palette, and again, you didn't have to retune, but you did have to go grab a partial capo. So you're well on your way to experimenting with DADGAD. It's one of the most inspiring tunings you can put your guitar into. If you throw a capo into the mix, the possibilities are unlocked, and I guarantee you're gonna come up with really cool ideas, whether it be for songs, for riffs, or just for your own enjoyment of playing the guitar. This is gonna propel you in a direction that you otherwise would not have gone. So until next time, keep playing, enjoy yourself. That's what it's all about, and I'll see you in the next video.